Okay, this is the situation at the end of September, October 1940. I thought this was going to be a quieter turn, but it didn't really go out that way. Let's start by looking at the neutrals before we go into this. America's continuing rearmaments. The only thing I did do with the Americans was I noticed they'd moved the Pacific Fleet to Pearl Harbor. They weren't allowed to do that unless they did a specific American action, which they haven't got enough entry points to actually achieve. Another thing I have done in the Pacific, I've marked out all the possessions, so it's a lot clearer who owns what in the Pacific. That's as a result of the Free French, which we'll go into in a minute. Chinese, well, I said I did the neutrals first. The Chinese are at war, but they aren't really in a position to do anything. The Communist Chinese are quite strong, but the nationalists are not really strong enough to do anything against Japan. And also they've got this fact that everything they do is halved as well in terms of attack, so that's not good. The Japanese, they're rearming still, getting ready to take on the the rest of the world in the Pacific. Now, the only thing they did do was they launched a little offensive here that nipped off a Chinese salient, but that was about it. Russia, although a neutral, they triggered a massive set of political activities by seizing Bessarabia. Well, they made a claim against Bessarabia. Now the Germans have to decide what to do. They actually allowed that claim to go ahead. Now, in the same time, that triggered Bulgaria to snaffle a bit of Romanian territory here. South Dobruja, and the Hungarians also snaffled Transylvania. The Germans responded by activating the Romanians as a minor. Well, they're not activating, aligning them as an Axis minor. Now that got an American response, which triggered an American entry chit. They also went on Germany to align Hungary and Bulgaria without any more American chits being pulled. So that sort of slightly spread the war into the Balkans. There's certainly a lot of political activity there. One thing we did have in the Balkans is the Italians declared war on the Greeks, and they weren't particularly successful in doing that. But another thing the Italians did, they got their submarine fleet to sea, and they actually did do some damage to Allied convoys there. Germans concentrated on starting to move some of their army back to the east. They did a couple of strategic bombing raids on London. Nothing particularly successful, but they did knock out a production point. They actually got the U-boats into the game and did some damage to Allied convoys, but they actually suffered a damaged U-boat and an aborted U-boat as a result. The next major change, we'll talk about France. Now, because France surrendered, it's split into two powers. You have a conquered major power, which is occupied France over here, and you've got a neutral major power called Vichy France in here, and you had to throw for all their territories. Now, all on the European map, all the French territories have remained Vichy. So you've got North Africa, up there's Tunisia, Algeria, Morocco, French Morocco that is, are still all under Vichy control, as is Syria here. As for the rest of the world, this is where it starts getting complicated. Now, I've pulled some chits from another game here so I can see Free French as against Vichy French. So the Free French ones are these ones here. And let's see if I can find a Vichy French marker. There should be one there. But hold on, I'll put that in a second. Vichy French markers. Right, we'll have to go over to Africa to see Vichy French. So if we move over to Africa, I've put loads of little markers so you see who owns what. Now Vichy France have these markers here which come from Days of Decision, so you've got control over French West Africa, which are all what goes Vichy, and you've got French Equatorial Africa here that went to Free France. Free France took over Madagascar and the surrounding islands, which we have here, which are islands like Mauritius, the Comoros, etc. We've also got let's see, we've got Free French took into China. That's a bit of a problem because that's not how it went historically. It went to Vichy, so Japan can't just align that. They're going to have to attack it if they want to move into that territory. We've also got French Pacific territories here which went to Free France. If we go over to the Americas, you've got French islands here, a Vichy. There's a Vichy, French Guyana's Vichy. You've got some French island there. There's French Polynesia here, and the Marquesas, which are Vichy. And that's it for the situation considering that affects French territories. If we look at Britain, well, the Commonwealth, which technically is actually the Commonwealth and the Empire, it's not really Commonwealth, but British launched their first strategic bombing raid into Germany with an attack on where did they go? They attacked Dortmund. They didn't really achieve much, but it was worth a go. Other things the British have actually done, they've moved a lot of ships out to control the North Sea. They put some. Now that's interesting. I forgot that there was a task force there. That would have affected the outcome of the anti-submarine throws in the Battle at the Atlantic. No, it's too late now. I'm not going back on that. They've also protecting the convoys as well down here in Cape St. Vincent. They've moved some fleets over here. They're going to bring some Indian units over to support the situation in the Middle East. Italy and Britain pretty much standing each other off in the Middle East here. No one's really got any strength to do anything. But there's going to be a situation where the British are going to have to challenge the Italians for control of the Mediterranean at some point. You can't let the Italians seize the Med here, because that means all our supply lines would have to go around the Cape, which is a lot of messing around. we look at other things affecting Britain, we've actually, as you've probably seen, I've put British Empire or Commonwealth control markers all over the globe to show, just to give you a clue of just how big the British Empire actually was. It's just massive. You know, you've got all India, Pakistan area, which they obviously own. They've got Burma, Malaya down here. They've got some territories in Borneo. You've got all this Pacific stuff here. There's British territories dotted all over the Caribbean. There's British Ghana, British Guatemala there. You've got the Falklands right down here, South Georgia. If you go over to Africa, there's this huge swathe from South Africa, Southwest Africa, Bechuanaland, I think it's Botswana now, the Rhodesias, Mozambique, all up the coast here, Tanzania, Uganda, Kenya. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention the Italians seized control of British Somalia, or British Somaliland. So that's the first British territory that's actually fallen to an Axis power. The big thing I would say about the war now is it's starting, even though it hasn't gone global in terms of having the Axis and the Allied powers fighting across the entire planet, it's certainly gone continental. It's a much bigger war, even though there was nowhere near as much fighting going on in Europe. There's a lot of activity going on in terms of the game.